On the 27th of April 2021, Wolfire Games filed an antitrust lawsuit against Valve stating it's able to extract such high fees because it actively suppresses competition to protect its market dominance and prevent other game stores from gaining share by competing with Steam store on prices. PC gaming makes an estimated $30 billion per year, with Steam making 75% of the total, with $22.5 billion in sales. However, developers and publishers over the years have made attempts to challenge Valve's dominance, but Steam has proven to be the most dominant and take a large majority of the distribution on PC. This lawsuit is in response to the policies made by Valve for Steam that control and asserts its already high dominance on the PC platform, which leads to competition failing and for Steam to control the market. This story has been reported a lot by different news outlets, but the question of why and explaining the complex situation with Steam wasn't really answered. This video will be mostly elaborating on the lawsuit and the overall landscape of PC gaming. There's a lot to this story, so let me explain this situation fully. But let's start from the beginning. Steam is a digital game distribution service on PC that is owned by Valve. Steam has been around since 2003. It's a place where you can buy video games as well as a platform that people use to play the games they bought. At the time of recording, concurrent Steam users peak at around 24 million players worldwide. Steam is also known as a publisher for games like Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2, Dota 2, and Half-Life. Most recently, Valve has also been venturing into hardware with Steam machines, Steam Link, and VR headsets. Wolfire Games is known for creating games like Overgrowth and Receiver, as well as being the originators of services like Humble Bundle, which is another digital game distribution service on PC. Humble Bundle went into its own company in 2010 after the release of the second Humble Bundle. Meanwhile, Wolfire only consists of 4 employees and is largely a game developer. Humble Bundle, however, in 2019 was bought out by Ziff Davis, which is a parent company of IGN. Wolfire's lawsuit argues that approximately 75% of the sales on PC flow through the online storefront of a single company, Valve, and that Valve uses its dominance to take an extraordinary high cut from nearly every sale that passes through its stores, 30%. This 30% commission yields Valve over $6 billion per year annually. This 30% commission yields Valve over $6 billion in annual revenue. For everyone else, it yields a higher price and less innovation. It should be noted that Valve in the last few years has changed its commissions to be 25% if you make over $10 million and 20% if you make $50 million. For comparison, Epic Games Store charges 12% and Microsoft Store is following suit. This number doesn't account for fees like engines like Unreal, which Epic takes 5% revenue share if you make over a lifetime gross revenue of $1 million. Distributors like GOG generally take 30%, however this number is not applied to all games. Apple is 15% until over $1 million, where it's 30%. Google recently announced that it will take a 15% from the first million that you make, and then 30% from then on in. Consoles are universally 30%. Humble Bundle has a 25% revenue share, however, 10% of this goes to charities, with 15% going back to Humble Bundle. So if you're a developer or publisher on Steam, you would need to accept the 30% cut to your revenue on each sale. You can reduce this to 25%, but you would need to sell an estimated 170,000 copies at $60. One report found that the average game on Steam in 2019 sells 1,500 copies and makes about $1,600 in its first year, with the average cost of a game in 2019 costing $10. Wolfire in the lawsuit states that Valve blocks pro-competitive prices through 2 main provisions: the Steam Key Price Priority provision and the Price Veto provision. These two provisions are the main two ways that Valve and Steam have managed to keep the competition down so that it's able to generate $6 billion in annual revenue. Each one, to some extent, ensures that users are funneled into the Steam storefront instead of other platforms. Firstly, the Steam key price priority provision, that is way too long. Valve normally allows game publishers to make some limited third-party sales of Steam-enabled games through its Steam Keys program. Essentially, Steam allows devs and publishers to generate keys that can be gifted or purchased on third-party sites to be activated on Steam. Steam has a library system that stores your game purchases and allows you to download your games onto your system via Steam. So even if games were to be purchased elsewhere, users would need to use Steam in order to download and play the game. Once the user owns the game, they own it as long as the account is existing. It should be noted that Steam keys are free for developers and publishers to generate, however there is a limit on how many you can make in one go, and Steam can reject keys if they see fit. However, this lawsuit states, Valve has rigged the Steam Keys program so that it serves as a tool to maintain Valve's dominance. Skipping ahead, put explicitly by Valve, we want to avoid a situation where customers get a worse offer on Steam Store, but that is the equivalent to preventing games from obtaining a better offer from competing distributors. The effect of this rule is to stifle price competition. What this means is that if you, for example, you bought your game through Green Man Gaming or Humble Bundle, the offer needs to match Steam in price, meaning that no matter what, the best deal would be Steam. This becomes an issue due to the 30% commission, since even sites like Green Man Gaming had a better service fee. Due to it being the same price as Steam, it leaves customers buying off Steam and developers losing out on potential profits that would have been made via other storefronts. As Wolfire Games explains, why Valve has been able to continue to charge an inflated 30% commission for many years, even as that commission is plainly above the levels that would prevail in a competitive market. Competition would normally force such an inflated commission to come down to competitive levels, but Valve's restraints prevent those competitive forces from operating as they would in a free market. Publishers cannot utilize alternative distributors to avoid the 30% tax. Thus, they reluctantly market their games primarily through the dominant Steam store, where Valve takes its 30% fee. Other services have tried to make marketplaces and storefronts around Steam's systems, but have failed to make a dent due to the provisions in place. Thus, prices have been inflated to be set to the same as Steam's store. As a side note, services like G2A and CD Keys work differently to services like Green Man Gaming or Humble Bundle, as those are more marketplaces for people to resell their keys. Money made from these sites like G2A and CD Keys goes between the site and the seller, not the developer or the publisher. The way these keys are obtained can also be through stolen credit cards or exploiting regional pricing, meaning that buying from sites like this might not only lead to receiving a banned key, but the developer or publisher does not receive the money. A developer of the game Descenders even tweeted that they would rather you pirated the game than buy from sites like G2A because devs don't see a penny either way, so we much rather G2A didn't see money either. Next is the price veto provision. Valve also requires game publishers to agree to give Valve veto power over their pricing in the Steam store and across the market generally. Valve selectively enforces this provision to review pricing by game publishers on PC desktop games that have nothing to do with the Steam gaming platform at all. Through this conduct, prices set in the Steam store serve as a benchmark that leads to inflated prices for virtually all PC desktop games. Due to the 30% tax, Wolfire argues that publishers and developers have inflated their prices to compensate, since even if a game was on a service like Epic Games Store or Windows Store, the price would need to match with Steam no matter what. The revenue cut on some services are lower than Valve's 30%. Epic Games Store with the Epic Games Store Epic Games with the Epic Game Store offers a 12% revenue cut, which is significantly lower. Deep Silver, the game publisher for Metro Exodus, was originally to be released on Steam for $60. However, when it switched to an exclusive on Game Store, the price was reduced to $50. This strategy made Deep Silver better off, as it would 88% of the $50 or $44 when selling through the Epic Game Store, rather than the 70% of $60 or $42 on Steam. However, if Metro Exodus was to be released at the same time on both Epic Game Store and Steam, Steam has the power to veto over prices, meaning that Valve ultimately decides the pricing of your game on PC. Not only this, Valve has also set up the Steam store to focus on games that are normally on sale to gamers, which leads to game publishers inflating their prices to make headroom for discounting. So when the game is not on sale, gamers pay for that artificially inflated price instead and overpay for the game. Which is why Steam is always the cheapest option, because other services have to match Steam's prices. The only way to avoid this is not to place your game on Steam. But because Steam takes up a 75% of the market share of digital PC games distribution, no one else is able to compete. Epic Game Store in 2019 only takes up 2% of the market share, even though it's one of the most aggressively funded competitors. The market for PC desktop game distribution is worth at least $30 billion worldwide, and Steam sells 75% of those games. Valve therefore earns roughly 30% of $22.5 billion per year in commissions, or around $6.75 billion annually, all for simply acting as the middleman between gamers and publishers. With roughly around 360 employees, Valve now makes over $15 million per employee per year from Steam store commissions. So to summarize this, Steam has a massive control over the market with aggressive practices that dictate how much games can be sold for and effectively funnel PC gamers to its storefront, where developers and publishers take a 30% revenue cut. What this leads to is an inflated price across PC game distribution services who need to give headroom on prices for revenue. So, is Steam a monopoly? The 75% market share would prove that it's most popular, but it's also not a natural monopoly since it has competition. I will say I haven't been able to search for any annual reports from Valve on revenue and running costs, so most of these figures are estimates. But is Steam being a monopoly a bad thing? Many people have defended Valve and Steam over the last few years against decisions like Epic to buy out exclusives for their platform, even though it has been leading them to net losses. Consumers see a different side of the story, and as a consumer myself, I can see why people are defending Steam. Steam has been my go-to platform primarily since it's the most trusted and the most supported. It's been around since 2003 and thus has had the most time to iron out its issues and bugs, as well as adding features like the workshop, achievements, community hubs, and more. Not only that, if you've been on Steam for over 10 years now, like me, your account might be worth into the tens of thousands, which means that users who have already invested a lot of money into Steam will be less willing to move to another platform. Even if they did move to another platform, they would still need to keep their Steam accounts to be able to access their collections. And this isn't even going into Steam inventories, which some users have been heavily invested in, along with community features like achievements, badges, workshop. It makes it very difficult to convince someone to leave everything behind to move to different platforms like Origin or Uplay. Origins and Uplay were both attempts at moving away from Steam, but many players saw them as greedy for moving to other platforms, the same way 2K was criticized for making Borderlands 3 an exclusive on Epic Game Store. Many players didn't have a great first impression. Valve had issues with Steam back in 2003, but were ironed out over time, but services like Origin, Uplay, Epic, Windows Live, Many players weren't willing to put their money on the line for services that may or may not work. Even with services like Epic and Origin giving out free games, people just want a solution that worked, not another launcher or an account to sign into. Which is why these provisions that Valve has put in place is more questionable. When your service is being able to make people make petitions about games not being on your platform, why does it need to have provisions against competition? The large player base of Steam would stay on Steam if the service and prices were competitive, but it seems Valve is worried about losing market share. Valve wouldn't have to worry about prices being evenly matched with Steam, since players are willing to keep to the same platform and grow the one library instead of making multiple accounts. And gamers looking to bargain hunt to keep their games on Steam by Steam keys are usually getting comparable deals regardless, which leads to large numbers of players going to services like G2A and CD keys. So if these provisions were to be removed, what might happen? Take a look at when video games have competition from other releases, like H1Z1. H1Z1 was the dominant battle royale game in 2016, with nothing else but mods to replace it. At its peak, it had 150,000 players in July 2017. However, after PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and Fortnite came out, it shed 91% of its player base. Right now, it barely holds 700 players concurrent. The reason for this is that many players hated H1Z1, but there was no other alternatives. Once other Battle Royale games came out, H1Z1 quickly tried to release new updates addressing the game's issues and fully releasing the game from early access. But as you can see, that wasn't enough to compete with other Battle Royale games. And Valve has done this with other games like Team Fortress 2. After Overwatch release, many saw the similarities between Overwatch and the brand new Meet Your Match update in TF2 as a response to Overwatch's success. Counter-Strike Global Offensive has had more updates in the wake of Valorant to ensure its continued player base. Without other game releases, games like TF2 and CSGO wouldn't have had major pushes for content in the same way. That does not say they didn't before, but it's hard not to see the ping system in CSGO wasn't heavily inspired by Valorant.
Valve is so smart, dude. Like, they know that CSGO is their baby, and they know that they had no competition for years, and they did nothing for years. The second a Valorant beta, closed beta comes out, they start pumping updates. It's so smart. They only update and they only do shit when they know they have to. But for years and years and years, Counter-Strike was just smooth sailing. No competition. Now that there's competition, whew, they're making updates. That's good. That's a good thing. I like that because we'll see something new in Counter-Strike, which is cool.
If there was more competition, then consumers in theory would get a better deal on games, better services, and better features. But due to the dominance of Steam, Valve is stubborn to improve its service for both developers and consumers. The idea that Valve is pro-consumer is false. That doesn't mean that other companies are pro-consumer, but Valve does have a cult following for defending Steam even though its competition might improve the service they enjoy. The provision in place can be seen as being used to control the prices of games on PC and maintain Valve's market share artificially, even though it's clearly the most dominant already with a large amount of incentives to keep players on Steam regardless. As for where the lawsuit leads us, who knows? Epic's games and Apple are both in court at the moment for similar reasons, so it may be dependent on the outcome of that trial that determines if this lawsuit goes all the way through. To summarize the Epic versus Apple lawsuit, the lawsuit is alleging that Apple has a grip on the iOS market with its iOS store and the 30% revenue cut that the platform takes. Depending on the verdict, Valve may need to remove the 30% revenue share and or its provisions, but only time will tell. If there's any more details I've left out, I'll place them into the comments and description. I'll also be linking to my reading list along with the original lawsuit document in the comments and description as well. Thank you for watching. I hope this wasn't too painful to watch me stare at my screen and read the script for you. Do like, share, hit the bells, and subscribe in whatever order you wish, and I'll see you soon. I would re-record that, but I've been recording for 30 minutes now. I can't be bothered.